Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at not just measures of central tendency, but also some measures of spread. So in the last video that you looked at, you had a set of 6 data points with ages of students. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give you some examples of data sets with more data points. So this is the same data set as before, except that I added another 15 here at the end. And we're going to find all the same parts. We're going to find the range, the median, quartile 1, quartile 3, and the interquartile range of this data set. So let's go ahead and start with the range. We're going to look at our lowest number and our highest number. Now these are already in order from least to greatest, so that makes it easier. So for our range, we're finding the distance between those two numbers. So 15 minus 11 equals 4. So our range is 4 for this data set. Now, in order to find quartile 1, 3, and interquartile range, we need to start with our median, our middle number. So we're going to use the strategy that we had used in our last video. We're going to mark out the lowest, highest, lowest, highest, lowest, highest. And because it's an odd data set, we have our median right in the middle. So 13 is our median. Now, for our first quartile, that represents the first quarter of the data. Quartile 3 represents 3/4 of the way, third quartile. And then the interquartile range is the distance between those two, the distance between the two quartiles, 1 and 3. So for quartile 1, we're looking at our lower set of data over here. And we're going to find the median of that set of data. So we have the same strategy. But I'm going to mark it out in the opposite direction. So mark out to the left, mark out to the left, highest, lowest, and then we have 12. So 12 is our first quartile, okay? This is quartile 1. Now we're going to do the same thing for quartile 3. We're going to mark out the lowest, mark out the highest, and here we have quartile 3. Which is 15. Okay. Now, because we had this odd data set and we had an odd number in the lower and an odd number in the upper set, it makes it a lot easier. So for our interquartile range, our IQR, let's remember that that is quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So for this set of data, that's going to be 15 minus 12, which equals 3. So our IQR is 3. So this is an example of if you have a set of 7 data points. Now for our next example, we have 8 data points. And this one actually requires the most work, but the steps are just the same. Now for this one, the point that I added was 10. Okay, so we have a new minimum or a new lower value. So first for our range, we're going to look at our lowest and our highest value, which is 10 and 15. So 15 minus 10 equals 5. So our range for this data set is 5. There's 5 ages between the highest and the lowest. Now for the median, same strategy. Mark out the lowest, highest, until you get to the middle. Now because this is an even set, it's actually not 12 or 13, it's directly between the two numbers. Now in some situations, you can ask yourself, okay, what is exactly in the middle between 12 and 13? If we were thinking of money, $12, $13, what would be exactly in between those two? Okay, I want you to think about that while I find the average or the mean, because if you're not sure what's right in the center, you can always find the average or the mean to calculate it. So for this situation, that would be 12 plus 13, which gives you 25. And then because it's 2 points, we take the 25 and divide it by 2. Okay, 2 goes into 2 once. 1 times 2 is 2, we get 0. 5 divided by 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract, add your decimal 0, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now, some of you may have thought that 12 and 5/10 is exactly in the middle between 12 and 13. You can also think about it like money. What's between $12 and $13? $12.50. So that's our median. Okay. Now, for quartile 1, remember, we're looking at the lower set of data, and we're finding the median again, but just on this side. So I'm going to draw my lines in the opposite directions. Lowest, highest, and then here again, we have the lowest and the highest, so we know it's directly in between here. This is going to be our first quartile. Quartile 1. It's exactly between 11 and 12. Now I'm going to go ahead and make myself some more space over here. Now for this one, you can use the same strategy we just did of what is exactly between 11 and 12. What's exactly between $11 and $12? You can think of it that way, and I'm going to do one more example. So if you're not sure, remember, if you have two numbers, you're finding the average. So 11 plus 12 gives you 23. There's two data points, so we're dividing by 2. 23 divided by 2. 2 goes into 2 once. 1 times 2 is 2. Bring down the 3. 2 goes into 3 once. 1 times 2 is 2. Add our decimal 0. I don't know if you're seeing a pattern here, but it always ends in 10 divided by 2, which gives you 5. Anytime you divide an odd number by 2, you'll end up with 5/10. So that's another pattern to look for. So just like our first one, directly between 11 and 12 is 11 and 5/10, or if you're thinking about money, $11.50. Okay, now let's look for our third quartile. Now we're looking at our upper set of data here, but we're finding the median again. So we mark out the lowest, the highest, and then here, oh, there we go. Now here, it's between 14 and 15. This is our third quartile. Now, we've already done this twice. We found what's between 11 and 12, 11 and 5/10, between 12 and 13, 12 and 5/10. So just like the others, between 14 and 15 is 14 and 5/10. Okay? Remember, if you're not sure, add the 2 up and divide by 2. Okay? Okay, our last part is our interquartile range. Okay, let me go ahead and get rid of this once more. And then for our interquartile range, remember we're looking between quartile 3 and quartile 1. So our quartile 3 was 14 and 5/10, and we are subtracting quartile 1, which is 11 and 5/10. Now, because we have decimals, we want to make sure when we're subtracting that we are lining these decimals up to make sure our place value is in the correct place. 5 minus 5 is 0, 4 minus 1 is 3, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So our IQR here, our interquartile range, is 3. Now, like I said, a data set like with 8 points, this is going to be the one with the most steps because we have to find the average median in the middle. We also have to do it for quartile 1 and quartile 3. But again, each step isn't that tricky, so hang in there, okay? You can do it. Now, for our last one, we have 9 data points. So we're going to go ahead and look at our last example here. 9 data points. Okay, the one I added in here is I added in another 11. Okay, and they're still in order. So that means that our range, the distance between the lowest and the highest, is actually the same as before. 15 minus 10, which equals 5. So our range is the same. Now for our median, let's go ahead and find the middle. Lowest, highest, lowest, highest. It's an odd number, so we know we're going to end up with one number in the middle, which is 12 for this data set, so the age of 12. Okay, quartile 1, we are looking at the lower half of the data here. So for quartile 1, we're finding the median again, so mark out the lowest, mark out the highest. Now we have 2 numbers here, but look what you notice about these 2 numbers. They are the same. Excellent. Because if they're the same, that means it's that number, which is 11, because there's nothing between 11. You could add them up, you could divide by 2, but you get the same number. Okay, quartile 3, we're looking at the upper half of the data. and we're finding the median here. So we're marking out 13, we're marking out 15, and then we're looking between 14 and 15. Now this ends up being the same as our last data set, directly between 14 and 15, which is 14 and 5/10. Don't forget, if you get nervous and you're not positive, just remember, add up the two numbers, 14 plus 15, you'd get 29, and then you just divide 29 divided by 2. Okay, and that's how you'll get it. It works every time if you're not sure about what's exactly in the middle. Okay, our last part is the interquartile range. So remember, our IQR equals our third quartile minus our first quartile. So that's going to be 14 and 5/10 minus 11. Now again, we want to be careful here with our decimals. So 14 and 5/10 when we're subtracting 11. Remember, it doesn't have that decimal, but we know it goes right next to the ones place. So we add that there. 5 minus 0 is 5, decimal. 4 minus 1 is 3. So our interquartile range here is 3 and 5/10. Now we've been working on this with just data sets so far, and in the future we're going to be applying all of these skills to dot plots, stem and leaf plots, histograms, and box plots. Okay?